Hello AOS fans and welcome to 15-minute fights. One of our previously streamed battle reports shrunk down to just 15 minutes with all the juicy bits kept in. This game is one we recently streamed live featuring Hexbanes Hunters versus the Crimson Court. I'm going to crash right in to the game itself. We roll off to see who gets priority on the first turn. Robin gets 2 crits and a single, and Pete gets 2 crits and a single. Now as Pete's out first, he gets an extra crit and therefore decides to choose for Robin to go first. On his first turn, he decides to make a charge with Pock. He runs across, stands onto the cover hex, and takes a shot at Gorath with 2 hammers, 2 damage, and knockback 1. He manages to roll 2 hammers, that's 2 successes. Pete needs a crit to save this with Gorath's 1 dice, and he gets 1 shield. So that is 2 damage taken. Gorath is down to 2 wounds left and gets pushed back 2 hexes because of the knockback on Pock's weapon. In the power step, Robin plays a Circle of Silvered Gravesalt, which means that basically all hexes adjacent to all of his hunters become lethal hexes as well as whatever they are currently. This lasts until the end of the round or until he makes a move action. Robin then remembers that the dogs also have a reaction move for whenever he moves one of his fighters and decides to shift up Grot Biter ready for the next round. Pete then plays Blood Vial, removing Gorath's hunger tokens and 1 wound counter, putting him now on 3 left. On Pete's first turn, he decides to charge Gorath. He does move up adjacent to one of the dogs, and then he swings for Amos, the big guy. It's 2 range, 2 hammers and 2 damage. Pete gets 1 hammer, so 1 success there. Amos only has 1 defense dice, and he gets a dodge, which is not what he needed. So Amos takes 2 damage, he's left with 1, and is then pushed back into another cover hex. In the power step, Robin plays By the Order of the Vault, play an upgrade without it costing any glory, very nice, and then plays Martyr's Fervor on Amos to get +1 damage. On Robin's second turn, he charges with Amos into Gorath, knowing he's not long for this world, with 2 hammers, 3 damage now, and single assists from the dog. Robin gets those 2 single assists, so Pete needs a crit on his dice, and he gets it. Robin is not very happy here.
Oh, I'm going home. It's taken on from that. We've watched another live stream. Oh, bloody hell.
What a lovely roll.
In the power step, Pete plays Bestial Transformation on Velas. It's a ploy and not an upgrade, but it does last on them until an upgrade is put on them. It gives them Cleave and Ensnare on all their ranged attacks, and it would remove any upgrade she does have. Robin then plays Prayers of the Faithful, which means until the end of the next power step, enemies cannot cast spells or play ploys, so that rules Pete out now. Robin then plays Making a Point, which is a single attack action for 2 swords and 1 damage. He decides to use Amos to make this attack, going against Gorath again. This time he rolls a crit. Pete needs another crit on his dice, but he doesn't get it. That's another 1 damage on Gorath, which puts him on 2 wounds taken, 2 wounds remaining. On Pete's second turn, he charges with Velas straight into the middle of the action and decides to attack Grot Biter the dog. It's 2 hammers and 2 damage. He has Cleave and Ensnare because of the Bestial Transformation. Pete gets a crit and a single assist, which means the dog cannot stop the attack as he only has 1 defense and he is taken out. But Pete earns no glory from the kill. This also inspires Rat Spike, the other dog. But then Pete does score Crimson Hounds for attacking an enemy adjacent to one or more friendly fighters and gains 1 glory there. He also scores Superlative Skill, which he scores after taking out an enemy if all of the dice in the attack roll were successes, which they were. He gets 1 glory there too, totaling 2. Pete also decides to get rid of the hunger counts on Velas at this stage. Pete then plays Mirror Duelist on Velas, which means she gets 1 more additional supporter than normal. This stops her being bestly transformed as it is an upgrade. On Robin's third turn, he decides to charge with Bridget to attack Velas as she is surrounded at the moment. He gets single and double assists, he has 3 swords and it's 2 damage on this attack. Once again he gets 2 single assists, so 2 successes there. Pete needs another crit on Velas's 1 dice to defend. He fails, and Velas takes 2 wounds, and she has 2 wounds remaining. This is Robin's 4th attack of the round. He had 3 normal attacks and 1 from a ploy, which means he scores Due Process. He should have scored this after his 2 previous successful attacks as well, as that's the other way of scoring it, but he gets another card which he wouldn't have been able to score anyway. He gets 1 glory for this, so his total is now 1 glory. Robin also realises that Quiet Pox should also be inspired because one of the dogs is dead, so we inspire him at this point. On Pete's third turn, he decides to charge with Duval onto the cover hex and attack Amos. It's 3 hammers and 2 damage. He does get a crit, which puts Amos in a lot of trouble, and Robin does not get a crit to defend him, so Amos is dead. Pete gets rid of the hunger token on Duval as a result and scores 1 glory for the kill. In the power step, Pete decides to delve and then realises he's on the wrong marker, so delving it does absolutely nothing.
I'm on the wrong one. Pay attention, 007.
Dear.
That's made my night. I don't care what happens now. That is the sort of quality you could expect from Agent Sigmar playing games.
I've made some terrible mistakes. Pete then decides to cast Dark Glamour. He needs 1 lightning to succeed, and he gets it. With a successfully cast spell, he can pick a fight within 3 hexes and give them a move token. He decides to pick Haskell. What he doesn't realise is Haskell has a range 3 attack, so it's not the end of the world for him. He can still do his attack, which Robin decides to do for his 4th turn. He decides to shoot at Velas with Haskell, fishing for a crit for a Grievous to proc. No crit, but 3 successes in total, so Velas does need a crit to stop all the damage. Pete doesn't get it, but it's only 1 wound on Velas. She still has 1 rune remaining and is still in the game. On Pete's 4th turn, he decides to move Anais up to the token next to Duval and in the power step delve and reveal an objective this time. In the end phase, Robin scores nothing. He gets rid of Sowing Doubt as it's not a surge objective and decides to fish for something better. He then draws another objective card and 5 power cards. Pete scores Death's Domain for holding all the objectives in 1 territory for 2 glory, taking them up to 5. He then gets rid of the objective worthy opponent, because that's when your opponent has the same number or more glory than you, and right now he's in the lead, and then he draws 5 power cards and 2 objectives. Duval, Velas and Gorath all become inspired at this point as well, as they have no hunger counters, but Anais gets a 2nd hunger counter at the beginning of the 2nd round. The Vamps are looking good with 0 casualties so far, but several are quite wounded, and the Hunters still have a lot of tricks up their sleeve, even without Amos around to swing his big axe. Round 2 and Velas is starting to get very concerned about the number of people surrounding her. Time for the roll off, and Pete gets 1 of each, 1 crit, 1 single and 1 double. Robin only manages a single and a double assist, and therefore Pete wins the chance to go first and chooses to do so. He then immediately on his 1st turn attacks with Velas against Bridget, knowing that Velas is not long for this world. He gets 1 success, his attack also has cleave and ensnare, but Robin rolls a crit and completely ignores all the damage. In the power step, Pete puts the Von Marusi armour on Duval to reduce all damage by 1. In Robin's 1st turn, he decides to shoot with Hexbane at Velas. It's 3 sword 2 damage attack. He also has single and double assists on this roll. He gets a double crit. Pete can't stop this as she only has 1 defense dice, so Velas is shot down. Robin gains 1 glory, taking his total to 2. Both Haskell and Bridget inspire at this point as well. Haskell because he killed someone, and Bridget because Haskell's inspired and she just likes doing what he does. Pete puts Deathly Majesty on Duval, which means adjacent enemy fighters have -1 dice to attack him, and Robin puts the lucky Hexbeak foot on Bridget, giving her +1 defense and taking her to 3 dodge. She also cannot take damage from lethal hexes or gambits now. Pete then puts Deathly Apotheosis on Gorath, another ploy that acts a bit like an upgrade depending on the vampire's state. As he's inspired, it allows him to re-roll 1 of his attack dice. Robin then puts the retractable pistol upgrade on Bridget, which allows him to make a reaction attack when enemies move finish within 3 hexes. This scores Robin Weapons of Justice for playing a 2nd or subsequent upgrade on a friendly fighter in the same round, giving him 1 more glory and taking his total to 3. On to Pete's 2nd turn, he decides to charge with Gorath. He moves him across onto another cover hex and takes a swing at Rat Spike the dog. He gets 2 hammers and 2 damage on this one, and he gets 1 reroll with his Deathly Apotheosis. Pete gets 1 double assist, which is no good, followed by a 2nd. He decides to re-roll 1 of those and gets a single assist, so he misses completely. Robin then remembers that he has the reaction gun upgrade that he played previously and decides to use it a little out of sequence, but it doesn't really matter too much, as it doesn't have knockback and it can't kill Gorath, so it wouldn't have stopped his attack in any way. He rolls 3 dice and gets 1 success with 1 sword. But Pete rolls a crit and the universe is righted again and everything is back in sequence. On Robin's 2nd turn, he shoots with Pock at Gorath. It's 2 damage and it's 3 hammers at this stage, which is pretty good. Robin gets 2 hammers and Pete needs to roll a crit, but he doesn't get a 2nd one in a row and Gorath is shot down and killed. Robin gains a glory at this point, taking him to 4, but he forgets to take it, so he stays on 3. Pete then plays Blood Chalice on Duval, making him a level 2 wizard and stopping him from being able to gain hunger counters. Robin plays Ward of the Martyr's Blood. Enemy attacks can't be modified and cleave and ensnare do not work. On Pete's third turn, he then draws a card, thinking it's only his second turn. On Robin's third turn, he decides to shoot with Haskell at Ananias. He has 3 dice here. He gets a crit and a sword, and Pete only has 1 defense dice, so Ananias takes 2 damage, leaving him with 2 wounds remaining. Pete then scores Spirited Attempt off of this, which is when an enemy fighter's attack deals damage but isn't enough to kill the target, taking his total to 6. On Pete's fourth turn, he decides to charge with Ananias at Haskell, running onto a cover hex. 3 swords and 3 damage. He gets a crit. Robin only has 1 defense, but he gets a crit too. Pete decides to shove him back, but that's all he can do. On Robin's fourth turn, he decides to charge with Hexbane to shoot at Ananias again. It's 3 swords and 2 damage. He gets another crit. Pete needs a crit to keep Ananias in the game, but he doesn't get it. He was not treated very nicely here. Robin gains 1 glory for killing Ananias, giving him 4. It should be 5 because he forgot the 1 for Gorath before. At this point, Pete plays Vampiric Might on Duval, giving him effectively +1 damage, taking him up to 3. Pete then thinks he's got a turn left. He takes what is a 5th activation and charges with Duval. He decides to go for Pock, and he gets a crit. Robin does not get anything to save that and is taken out of action. Pete gains another glory for this, taking his total to 7. Robin realises he can then play an upgrade as a reaction to the kill and puts the Lantern of Vengeance on Bridget, a cool little spell action that damages all fighters within 2 hexes if cast, and the caster's level is based on the number of hunters that you have out of action at that point. Pete then uses Duval's Fiendish Law. He's now a level 2 because of the chalice, so he gets 2 dice to cast it, and he gets 1 success. This is enough, and he decides to pull Haskell forwards. Even though he's in the cover hex, he's now next to Duval for an attack next round. In the end phase, Robin scores Proof of Guilt, a hybrid card, but in this situation Robin scores it because all enemy fighters are in the same player's territory. He also scores Fear the Righteous, which means there are 3 or more enemy fighters are out of action and 2 or more friendly hunters are alive. This gives him 2 more, taking his total to 8. All of this means he then scored 3 objectives this round, and with 2 hunters out of action, he scored Lives Well Spent, giving him another 2 for a total of 6 scored in this end phase, and taking his overall total to 10, although it should be 11 because of the glory he missed for Gorath. Robin then draws everything up as he has no cards left. Pete scores Red Ruin, which is 3 or more enemies are taken out of action. This gives him 2 glory. He also scores Recovered Poise for having at least 1 inspired fighter for 1 more, taking him to 10 glory in total. After much umming and ahhing, he decides to keep his final gamble of an objective and then discards Vampiric Speed and draws 2 objectives and 5 power cards. The score should now be 11 versus 10 in Robin's favour. Pete may have inadvertently cheated to get a 5th activation, but it did him no good in the end, missing with nearly all of his attacks that round and losing 3 vampires as a result. The final round, and it's starting to get thin on the ground here. There are 4 fighters left. Only 1 vampire remains, but it is Duval, and he has upgrades up to the eyeballs. So we'll see how they pan out this time. Unfortunately, at the beginning of this round, we forgot to turn the dice camera back on, so we missed a few dice rolls. To determine who chooses who goes first, Pete rolls 1 crit, 1 single and 1 double, and Robin rolls 1 crit and 1 double, which means Pete gets to choose first, and he opts to go first. In his first activation, he attacks Haskell with Duval. He has 3 hammers and 3 damage and can one-shot him. He only gets a single hammer, however, and Robin gets a shield. Now Pete forgets that he has cleave at this point, and that should be a dead Haskell, but it's probably all worked out and a little bit of karma for his cheat in the previous round with that extra attack that killed Pock. Robin then plays Charmed Horseshoe on Haskell to give him +1 dice on attacks, and also gives him Ensnare. Pete plays Undying Evil on Duval, an upgrade which means that on his death, if he can roll a shield, he takes no damage at all and does not die. On Robin's first turn, he charges with Haskell away from Duval. He now has 4 swords and it's 2 damage with Ensnare. Robin gets 2 crits and 2 successes. Duval only has 2 defense dice, so cannot stop this even with a double crit. However, instead of taking 2 damage, he only takes 1 thanks to his Von Marusi armour, leaving him with 3 wounds. Robin then drives Duval back. Pete plays Driven to Hunt, which gives all friendly fighters within 2 hexes of Duval 1 hunger counter. Since Duval is within 2 hexes himself, he gains 1 hunger counter, but because he has the chalice Pete forgot that he gave him, he shouldn't be able to gain any more hunger counters, and that will be important. Robin then plays Protective Brand on Haskell, which means targets of this fighter's attacks cannot gain supports, and he gets 1 reroll on defences. Because of this, Robin plays for the Order after playing an upgrade. This is a ploy that then enables him to remove all move and charge tokens from a fighter. Very nice. Pete then plays Quicksilver Advance, which enables Deval to make a move action and runs him forwards back into the thick of it. Robin then uses his retractable pistol reaction and makes his 3 sword 1 damage attack. He gets a single success here. Pete does have 2 dice to defend and he needs shields, but he gets nothing, which means Duval takes an extra damage, which leaves him with 2 wounds remaining, his armour being no use. But Pete then scores preternatural speed for having all of his friendly fights in enemy territory and gains 1 glory, taking his total to 11. On Pete's second turn, Duval takes another swing at Haskell, 3 hammers and 3 damage with cleave. He only manages 1 hammer again. Robin does need a crit here, and he doesn't get it. He also forgets about the upgrade, which gives him the reroll, but he plays a reaction instead by hook or by crook. When a fighter with an upgrade is damaged, reduce the damage by 1 to a minimum of 1. 2 can play at this game, says Robin, meaning Haskell only takes 2 damage and is left with 1 wound remaining. On Robin's second turn, he decides to use the Lantern of Vengeance that Bridget is carrying. She effectively is a level 2 wizard at this point and needs swirlies. He gets 1 success, a crit, that is a successful cast, and that does another damage. He's left with 1 wound remaining. The upgrade lantern is then broken. On Pete's third turn, he decides to attack Haskell a 3rd time with Duval. Maybe 3rd time is the charm here. 3 hammers and 3 damage, and he gets a crit. Robin needs a crit to defend himself, but he doesn't get it. He also forgets his reroll that he got from his brand upgrade, and Haskell dies. Pete gains a glory for the kill, and he also scores Courtly Hunt, because the first fighter to die in this round is an enemy fighter, giving him a 2nd glory, taking his total to 13. On Robin's 4th turn, he makes a charge action with Bridget, running away from Duval as she has a ranged attack, and he then also uses the dog's reaction to run the dog up next to her as well, getting them both out of danger, much to Pete's chagrin. Duval only has 1 wound left, so this could take him out, and Robin gets a crit. It's looking good. But so does Pete, and Duval lives. Robin pushes him back in frustration, but that's all he can do. Pete then plays Tenebrous Form on Duval, stopping him being able to do effectively any actions, but giving him 3 dodge. On Pete's 4th turn, he draws a power card because he has very little left he can do. On Robin's 4th turn, he discards Eye for an Eye, which he can no longer score, as he needed to kill Duval to score that, and he picks up a new objective. At the end of round 3, Pete scores on the Chase, which is each surviving friendly fighter has 1 or more hunger counters for 1 glory. Now, he couldn't have scored this because he had the Chalice, which means he cannot have any hunger counters, so Pete shouldn't have scored that one. He also scores Grave Lords for 2, which is each surviving friendly fighter has 2 or more upgrades, taking his total to 16. Robin scores Uncover the Truth for having 2 fighters in enemy territory for 2, taking him to 12, but it should have been 13 for the Mist Gorath kill. The final score on here is 13 to 16, but it should have been a lot closer, possibly 15 to 14, or possibly even a 13-all draw. It's hard to tell. We did miss a few things out in this game, especially Pete's 5 activations in round 2. Not that it helped him very much, but we're a bit rusty and we haven't played in a while. So as it is being recorded live, we have less chance to be able to pick up on these things. Thank you to everybody who watched the original video and did comment on the things that we missed, and I hope you enjoyed this video. Hopefully it still made for a very enjoyable game to watch, and Haxel Hexbanes Hunters look to be a very fun and effective warband, even in the Rivals format using all of their own cards. Please do let us know if you enjoyed this video, give us a thumbs up and a comment, all help to spread the love around here, and if you do enjoy it, then we'll be sure to make more in the future. Bye!
You